What's up, y'all? It's your man, Stephen Bartle, coming at you with another edition of Bartle's Breakdown. I'm your host, Stephen Bartle, and I'm pleased to be joined by my main man, BJ Armstrong. We played against each other, worked out together in the summers, and, I was a fan from afar because we were the same age group, but BJ went on to do some great things, and we will kind of get into that. BJ, how you doing today, man?
Man, I'm doing well, Steve. It's great to see you. I'm happy to be a part of Bartle's Breakdown. Even though I'm not going to hold it, you and a former Illini. We were battling for many years in the Big Ten, but you had a great career, and I'm real proud of you. Now you've gone on. Now you got the podcast. I see you on my television screen all the time. So you're doing a lot of things here. Entertaining us. You're entertaining the Armstrong household for many hours.
I appreciate that, man. I'm glad to serve in that role. BJ, let's go back from the beginning, man. Let's talk about your upbringing in Michigan. How were you kind of exposed to the game? Was it older siblings? Was it a parent? Was it a friend? How were you first kind of exposed to basketball?
Well, my first exposure, just growing up in the city of Detroit, my dad, not many people know this, was a referee. And so my dad was always in the gym, and he always carried me with him. So I was able to just watch all of the older kids as he refereed in the Detroit public school system. So I was watching all of the kids, whether it was Roy Tarpley or Antoine Jobert, all of these guys who went on to play in the Big Ten, Durrell Johnson, so forth and so on. So I was just always around basketball. My dad introduced me to basketball, and then just growing up in the city, playing on the playgrounds, and, just like anyone else, I just kind of fell in love with the game, wanted to represent my little side of the town. And as I started to build my reputation in the city of Detroit, I just wanted to keep going. So, and I always carried that with me wherever I was at, whether it's the University of Iowa, when I played there in Chicago. I always carried the city of Detroit and the pride that we had there of representing our little neighborhood, representing the city of Detroit, and just wanted to make people proud of, this is how we do it up in that part of the country.
BJ, at what point, there's usually a point in people's careers when they figured out, like, okay, I'm going to be pretty good at this game. Was there a point, was there a person you beat? Was there a game or a tournament that you remember where it kind of clicked for you and you said, you know what, I can be pretty good at this?
Well, it happened real early for me, that moment in time, growing up. In the city of Detroit, we had this thing that there is no best. We had this, it was kind of always in our DNA growing up in the city of Detroit. We used to always play at this one place called Detroit St. Cecilia. And that's where you were, no matter where you were at in the world, I'm sure somewhere you've heard that name, somewhere you've crossed paths with someone from Detroit. When in the city of Detroit, no matter where you're from, the west side, east side, or whatever, you always had to come there to earn your rep. And it didn't really matter what you did yesterday. It didn't really matter what you did tomorrow. It was who was the best today. So every day, you had to figure out where you stood in that moment in time. So everyone was always edible. Anyone could get, hit with a crossover. Anyone could get hit with a 40 or 50 point, a 50 piece. So that's kind of how I grew up. There was no best, but every day you had to earn that. You had to earn that respect every single day you came in the gym. And the only way you could earn that, you had to come in the gym every day, right? Just because you won yesterday, that was yesterday. We'd always say, let's run it back. Somebody beats you, you're going to run it back. So that was kind of our mentality. And every time I took the court, okay, I might have won that game, but somebody is out there that's coming. The young guys behind me was Jalen Rose and Derek Coleman's and Chris Webber's. So it was just because I was the best today, that didn't mean that them young guys, they was hungry. Right. So that was kind of the environment that we grew up in. I kind of just carried that with me. And maybe I was just a naive kid, didn't know any better. I just took that mentality and has always stayed with me even to this day.
Was there a player that you tried to emulate your game after? Was there somebody that, like, I had Dr. J on my wall, I love Magic Johnson. Was there anybody like that for you?
Well, I just kind of wanted to So many players in the city of Detroit. I was just talking to somebody today, and I guess something was today. Actually, your name came up today. It was on the Big Ten Network. I guess they were showing the University of Illinois. I guess you guys, when you were in the Final Four, what have you, and people were asking me about, did I play against Stephen Bartle? Did I play against Kendall Gill? Did I play? I was like, yeah, those guys were real good. In Detroit, it was always like kind of the old heads. You kind of had this respect thing. There was a guard there that I really loved. His name was Terry Durod.
Oh, I remember.
And Terry Durod. He wasn't like the greatest player. He wasn't the best player. But every time you would go to the gym, he would always show up. And I just always admired him for playing. He carried himself, and he was really one of the first guys that I saw that I knew. I saw him in high school, I saw him in college, and then I saw him in the pro. He wasn't like so far removed that I couldn't identify with him. So, he was like a real person to me. And this real person had actually made it, like someone that I knew, someone that I saw, someone that I could actually touch, and so he was kind of the first person that really was like a hero, but he was our hero. He wasn't like the superstar, but he was our hero because he always came back and hung out with us, and we could play against him. And then we was like, oh man, I scored on Terry Dew, or he scored on me. So he was like this first guy that was like, like he was like, he was like our guy in the hood that we all could like ask questions to, and he made it. And he was, I don't know if he knew it or he intentionally did it, but he always came back and shared his stories with us. So that just kind of gave us the confidence that we needed to move on with our own basketball careers and our own life.
That's pretty cool. Terry played at Detroit Mercy. Is that right?
Yeah. He played at the University of Detroit with Dick Vitale and all those guys there. So, Terry, he can shoot it. That's one thing about Detroit. We could all shoot up from up that way. We all going to put it in the basket, So we all had a, growing up in Detroit, the first thing our coach used to always tell us, his name was the late Sam Smith, Sam Washington, I'm sorry. And he would always tell us, the most important skill that I could ever teach you all in this gym is how to put that ball in the basket. You don't learn anything else, you're going to learn how to put it in the basket here. Now, I can't promise you're going to be good on defense or good at passing, but if you ever notice anybody from Detroit, we all going to be able to put it in that basket. That's the one thing that we all going to do up there.
I love it. I love it. You're listening to BJ Armstrong joining me on Bartle's Breakdown. BJ, I know you had a lot of choices to go to college. I share with me your top 5 choices and then why you chose the University of Iowa.
Yeah, well, I did. I was very fortunate. Had a lot of opportunities. I visited, I'm getting old, I can't even remember. I visited Michigan State, Michigan, Boston College, University of Iowa, and I think the last one was Kentucky, I believe. And so I chose the University of Iowa. I wanted to stay in the Big Ten. My first choices was to go to either to Michigan State or Michigan. Michigan was stacked at the time. They had Antoine Jobert. They had Roy Tarfley. Gary Grant was a freshman.
Yeah.
And then Michigan State was tough because Scott Skiles was a freshman. Durrell Johnson, these some guys. I think he played against all these guys as well. And then
man, I'm over here sweating.
Sam Vincent, the whole crew. So those guys were freshmen, and one of my favorite stories to tell is I remember visiting Michigan State, and I thought that's where I was going to go. And I remember it was like Sunday, I was leaving to go, and then Scott Skiles just kind of came in the room, and it was like, yeah, Scott, we think this guy's going to come to Michigan State. He was like, oh, great. He just better be prepared to sit 3 years on the bench and play behind me. And I thought, so that's why I didn't go to Michigan State. And Scott, every time I see Scott, we always joke around. Well, I'm not really joking. I'm still upset about that comment, but but no, it was funny. It was funny, and we still joke around. But you know what? Big Ten was always great with great guards. Bruce Douglas was up there. And he had so many guards that came through. University of Illinois. We had Ronnie Lester there at Iowa, Isaiah Thomas in Indiana, Magic Johnson. So I was just really excited to have an opportunity to play in the Big Ten. Never thought that would happen for me, but I always kept the faith and just kept working at it, and eventually go to Iowa and be able to move on and further and play professionally as well.
Yeah, man, you guys had some great teams at Iowa, BJ. I mean, when I try to go back, and we're going to do this pretty soon, we're going to have a Big Ten reunion of our era and get guys back. Dude, BJ, come on now. I mean,
yeah, it was.
it
I
was
mean,
ridiculous.
you guys made the Final Four. I mean, I think my whole 4 I think Indiana won it.
Yep.
Michigan won it.
Yep.
I know you guys went to the Final Four.
Yep.
Purdue
Minnesota
was always good.
there.
Minnesota, yeah, we got there.
Yeah.
It was just great battles, you know. And you guys at Illinois always had the length and big guards, and you know, myself, Roy Marble, Ed Horton, and all of us guys there at Iowa. Michigan State was always good. Michigan was stacked. Ohio State, Minnesota, Willie Barton, and all those guys. So those were good times, good memories, and it's always fun to see guys, and everyone's talking about their teams. The games get better. Everyone scored more points, so it's good. But most important thing is, I think there was a level of respect because we knew when we were coming down to play the Fighting Illini, we knew we were in for a battle, and we had some great battles like all through the Big Ten. That's when the Big Ten used to travel together, right? So, right. You know, it was it was tough back there.
You know, man, who I used to hate playing, but I would probably love to have on my team was Jeff Moe.
Oh, well, I hated to practice against him every day, so it was warranted, you know. But man, he was a tough kid from Indiana, could really shoot it, and he was a competitor. And he had found a niche, you know, where he loved to come off the bench. He came with that energy. He brought that energy every day, and he was a pest, that's for sure. Yep. Dive on the floor, and man, that's a name. And you know, he's doing very well. I know he had owned some restaurants or something that he was doing, so but he's doing well.
Oh, that's great. But yeah, man, you guys had a great success at Iowa. You know, under Dr. Tom Davis, you guys ran an orthodox system. You know, right. How did you take to that, BJ? Because it seemed like you seemed to benefit almost as much as anybody, even including Roy Marble, in that system. It always seemed like you knew where to find your shot. You knew when to be aggressive. You knew when to set guys up. How were you able to adjust to Dr. Tom's unique system so quickly?
Well, the good doctor, he sold me on the system because he had two guards who had already played in the NBA, John Bagley and Michael Adams. So he said his system was built around having a guard who could play and really dictate the offense and defensive schemes of what we're trying to do. So I just took it as a personal challenge to say, you know what, I don't know if I'm as good as those guys, but certainly he thought enough of me to even mention me in those names, even though I hadn't achieved anything. And it was a great system for a guard because we played at, you know, now that I think about it, we played at a certain pace. Yep. We were going to trap the whole entire game. And the faster the game, the better, you know, he encouraged me to go out and play and just don't worry about making mistakes. Just play at the pace and all the other things will take care of itself. So I enjoyed the system. We had great athletes, like you mentioned, Roy Marble, Kevin Gamble, Ed Horton, Gary Wright. We had great athletes, Brad Lojas, Jeff Moe. We had a really good team, and we had enough athletes that could play that style of play. So everything else just kind of fell into place. And as I continued to develop, as other players began to develop, we just, you know, we had more and more success. But, you know, like you said, the Big Ten was a monster. I mean, you know, it was just so many good teams every year, every game, you know, that was just, you know, you go to Indiana, then you got to go to Purdue, then Michigan State, Michigan, you guys, Ohio State, Minnesota, Wisconsin. Yeah. And then, so it was, you know, we beat each other up before we got to the tournament. It was just a relief to get to the NCAA tournament, playing in the Big Ten.
Good point. BJ, help me do this, man. I try to describe the Iowa Hawkeye fan base around the Big Ten, and they don't quite get it. Right. I had the benefit of calling all those Iowa games this year, and I got adopted by the state of Iowa as a honorary Hawkeye.
Oh man!
But can you explain the rabid nature of the Hawkeye fan base? I think it's one of the most passionate in the country.
Well, you know, you hear this a lot. You know, we got the best fans in the country. We got the best fans in the world. when I went there and I got off from the moment I got off the plane from as a kid who visited from Detroit, never been to Iowa, didn't know anyone in the entire state. It just felt like home. And we had a great fan base because that's the only sport in town, right? You know, there was no sports team. When the University of Iowa would play, the whole state would shut down and the focus was there. And just great people that we had to support us and the university, the whole state, right? I was just back there recently. I try to get up there at least once a year. And I just can't, I'm just always amazed at how, you know, when I tell you they are dedicated fans, they are dedicated fans up there. It's like no other place I've ever been, have seen, and I love it. You know, I took my wife there for the, you know, she was up there with me as well, and she was just in awe. She was like, "Is this what it's like?" I was like, "It's been like this since the '80s, since I got here, right?" And it's like passed on from generation to generation. And they are the best. It's a different crowd, but it's our crowd, and we love it. And every night I was there, I know I was fired up just to give my best because I know every night they were bringing their best, and it's a great place to play. And you know, you call games there, and you can see how passionate they are about their sports there in Iowa.
Oh man, I think it's getting back to the way that you all had it.
Yep.
When, for the viewers, when BJ was playing in Iowa, the Carver Hawkeye is a beautiful arena that's dug down into the ground a little bit.
Yep.
It's big. It doesn't look as big when you first walk in, but when you walk up those stairs, you go up top.
Right.
That place is big, man. And they used to stand the whole game when BJ and Roy were running the show.
Oh man,
remember that, right, BJ? I mean, they used to stand the whole game.
Yeah, I mean, it's stand the whole game. You know, the kid there this year, Luca. I mean, he's had an incredible year, and you could see the excitement back when it's rolling there. And I can't think of a better place to play. And but you know, look, when you go to you guys in Illinois, same, Michigan State, so the intensity is there. But it's just Iowa would bring it though. We would bring it, but there was always good fans throughout the Big Ten.
No doubt about that. So you did a really good job. You had a 4-year. You went 4 years, right?
Yep.
4 years, and then you were a first-round pick of the Chicago Bulls. On draft night, did you have any funny stories or anything before you got drafted?
I didn't. You know, it was still like a, you know, when I think about it, it was just kind of a surreal moment for me and my family. You know, we all dreamed, you know, Steve, like any kid, you dream you go to college, and yeah, I'm gonna go, you know, go to the NBA, and all of a sudden you realize the numbers are against you to be one of those kids, right? there are thousands upon thousands of people trying to get, you know, at that point, I think it was like 22 or 24 teams in the NBA, and then you're trying to be one of those 20 guys that actually get drafted in the first round. So I didn't know really what to expect. I had never been through the process. And I just knew that, you know what, I was getting workouts. I knew I had a chance. Not many people knew this. I broke my hand actually in the draft process. So
Really?
I had never been injured in college. And then the very first play of remember they used to have all the top seniors would play in these like tournaments,
Yep.
you know, NBA, whatever, training camp type events. And the very first play on the jump ball, I broke my hand. And the guard who replaced me was Tim Hardaway.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the guard who replaced me, because Tim didn't get invited, bro. Who knows why he didn't get invited. And then Tim Hardaway actually won the MVP of the tournament. And he goes on to have a Hall of Fame career, gets drafted, you know, I think by Golden State, you know, like in the lottery, what have you. And then I ended up getting drafted 18. So it all worked out in the end. But yeah, I just didn't know. I was just doing the best I could. And but things worked out for me and get drafted by Chicago. And as they say, the rest is history.
How did was it a situation, BJ, where you had to hide that, so to speak, or did teams hold that against you because you had that?
No, I broke my hand at the event. So it was like all the teams knew that, you know, I had broke my hand. So it wasn't like hiding or anything. It was just there. I couldn't continue the process of working out because of the injury. And it was like a freak accident, literally like jump ball. I went to grab the ball and I just I broke my left hand actually, and
Mm.
but again, I was there. I was in the cast for like, I don't know, 8 weeks or so. I can't recall how long, but I was there. I get drafted, and then I go on and play, and never had the injury or anything ever again. But that happened on the very first play of the of those college whatever tournaments they were at the end of the season.
That's crazy. So I know that you close with your family and everything, but was there anything that you wanted to purchase when you got in the league? Was there anything that you just bought? You said, "Man, I know I shouldn't do this," but you did anyway.
Man, well, no. First of all, no, because I wasn't making enough money to purchase anything, right? It wasn't like today's contracts, like guys making millions of dollars. I put it like this: I was at the low end of a six-figure salary at that point,
I got you.
before taxes. So, and I didn't know how long I would play. It wasn't any security, or it wasn't like you knew you were going to be there for 5 years. So I just took the idea that every day I was just going to, be a professional, try to carry myself in a way that allowed me to stay here as long as I could, not knowing anything, right? This was before, you had these monster contracts and things, that you're seeing now. So, I just remember my parents just saying, hey, save your money. You never know how long this is going to last. Do the best you can. And before I knew it, I had looked up, I was in the NBA for like 10 plus years. So, as quickly as you come in, the time goes by so fast. And I enjoyed every minute of it, but I didn't want to buy anything. My parents was like, hey, we don't know how long it's going to last, so you might as well save it and get yourself ready to go. It's kind of like, get your education. Who's going to make the NBA? You're never going to make it.
Right.
And but they never told me I wasn't going to make it. So that's probably what gave me the courage to keep trying, right? Because the only thing I could do is I wasn't going to play in the NBA, but at least I tried.
There you go. Well, I mean, you did more than play in the NBA. I looked up your stats, man. I mean, you averaged almost 10 a game
Right.
throughout your 10-year career. You got some championship rings. Talk about that experience, man. What is it like to be an NBA champion? How does it change your life?
Well, winning the final game of the season, I don't care what level, is very difficult to do. And every now and then you'll see something you've never seen before. And growing up in Detroit, I saw some really good basketball players, right? I saw Magic Johnson growing up. I saw George Gervin, and when he would come back home, growing up a Piston fan, I watched Isaiah Thomas. But I was very fortunate to see something I had never seen before. When I first got to Chicago, I saw a player named Michael Jordan. Never seen a player like this one. I saw a lot of good players. I saw a lot of great talents, but I never saw a player like this. And so when I got to the NBA, it gave me a different perspective, because I was like, I knew I was seeing something that I had never seen before. And I knew it gave us a chance. It gave us an advantage. And that's the one thing I learned very quickly about the NBA, is you have to learn how to play advantage basketball. And advantage basketball is quite different than running your system in the college game, or just being the best player on the floor as you are a high school player. Michael Jordan gave us an advantage, and that advantage allowed us to have an opportunity to win the final game. And so it was a quick learning curve, but at the same time, playing professionally, the beautiful thing about playing professionally is you get a chance to compete and find out who you are every single night.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to wait until the game of the week to find out. Every night I'm going to see Isaiah Thomas, then I'm going to see Gary Payton, then I'm going to see Fat Lever, then I'm going to see Kendall Gill, then I'm going to see Mo Cheeks. I'm going to see all of these guys night after night. So you find out very quickly whether you are, what kind of, if you're cut out for this league or you're not cut out for this league. And watching him and watching Michael Jordan play, I was able to quickly understand that, yeah, physically you got to have some gifts, but mentally you have to be so tough to be able to accept this challenge because every night you don't have your, if you play 4 games in 5 nights, you just don't have it on that fourth night.
That's
But you
right.
got to figure out a way to manage that game to give yourself a chance to win. So mentally, I began to understand how important it was for me to challenge myself, what that meant to prepare myself. Then I had to learn how to eat, learn how to rest, and do all of the things. So the challenges of being a professional are far more than just being good physically or having physical gifts. I had to really learn how to manage the things that I never really had to concern myself with about mental challenges of just playing in the NBA. So it was a great ride, and I got a chance to play against the greatest players, and I got a chance to play against a guy who I didn't know at the time was considered by many to be the greatest player, and certainly uh, being with him on a day-to-day basis for the years that I played alongside him. I can't challenge that because he was able to do things, and I saw things that I hadn't seen before as a young player, and to this day, I hadn't seen many players reach that level of excellence, if any at all.
BJ, there's a lot of times when you talk to guys that have had the success you've had at the NBA level, they'll refer to a player, an older guy who kind of cuffed you. Say, come here, Rick, I got you. Looked out for you, kind of showed
Right.
you things. Did you have a veteran that kind of looked out for you like that?
Yeah, I did. I had a number of guys, but the first guy that comes to mind is Bill Cartwright. Right. He, I always refer to him as the teacher because he was the one who showed me how to be a pro. Right. He showed me how to accept my matchup every single night. He showed me how to really study film in a way that's going to allow me to compete every single time I walk out on the floor. He showed me what it meant to be a pro's pro, right? And that was really my goal. I wanted to be a pro, and I wanted to play my part. I wanted to contribute. I really was never concerned about being a star player or doing it for the publicity. I just wanted the respect of my peers. And Bill Cartwright, he when he came in this league, he was an offensive player. He was averaging over 20 points a game. At the end of his career, he was a defensive player.
Great point.
And that to me was an accomplishment in and of itself because you can make a contribution on both sides of the ball. And so I really wanted to have that respect where the people that played in this league, the people who won in this league, I just wanted them to say, that he's a true professional. And so Bill Cartwright, I owe a lot of my career to him, but I had John Paxson was there, Craig Hodges was there, Charles Davis was there, Ed Neely, all of these guys who, Michael Jordan got all the publicity, and then Scottie Pippen was another top 50 player. But it was the pros who really taught me what it meant to be a professional in this league. And the guys you didn't see, the guys who helped me learn how to dress, help me pick my suits out, help me to tie my tie, to help me show how to conduct myself. And when I didn't know any better as a young kid, they were always there to, make sure that I got to the bus on the time and all of those things. So I owe my career many to those guys, those unsung heroes that we don't talk about, but those are the guys who really helped me to become a pro in this league.
Oh, that's great stuff, BJ. You're listening to Bartle's Breakdown. I'm your host, Stephen Bartle, joined today by BJ Armstrong. BJ, you said something in that last bit that caught my attention. Bill Cartwright taught you how to accept your matchup. Is that what he did?
Yeah. Yeah, well, all right. Let's take when you play an Isaiah Thomas, right? Isaiah Thomas he was a perennial all-pro player. He was gonna average 20 to 25 points a night, and he was going to be the first, second, and third option when you play, right? I'm playing on a team where I'm not the first option for sure. I'm not the second option for sure, and I would be lucky to get 4 or 5 shots per game, depending on how hot Michael and Scotty was going and whoever else was going, Horace Grant or whomever. So I had to learn how to participate in a game and compete in a game where clearly the player I was playing against was going to get over 20 shots a night. So that to me was a challenge, right? I was used to being I was used to being the first option. I was used to, having an opportunity to play and compete at that level, but then I had to learn how to compete on an entirely different level and play my role and contribute in a way that I had never done before. So once I learned that I could compete without the ball in my hands, once I learned what I could do and play the game and not have to score and really contribute in other areas, it was kind of a freeing moment for me. So, like I said, I owe that to all of the veterans who played in this league, because you understand once you become a pro that, everyone can have the ball. And 99% of us who come in the NBA, you're going to learn it either day one or day, 101, that most of us are role players that come in that league, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's how quickly are you going to learn what's your role and what can you really do in this league, right? There's nothing wrong with being Dennis Rodman. There's nothing wrong with being a Ben Wallace. There's nothing wrong with being a guy who plays a role. Yeah, I would love to be Steph Curry, and I would love to be Michael Jordan and all of these great guys. But the truth of the matter is that you better learn your role in this league, or you're going to be out of this league. And I was quick to understand that part of the business, because everyone can't shoot, everyone can't have the ball in their hand, and the guys who learn how to play without the ball are probably the most effective players who end up having a career in this league.
That's right. Now, I'm gonna make a transition out of your career to what you're doing now. You're with the Wasserman
Sure.
Group, and
Yep.
you do a great job in terms of sports representation and sports management. How tough is it for you when you are representing these players to get them to understand that concept that you just broke down? That most of us are going to be role players, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that find your niche, find your role, so that you can have longevity. How hard a sell is that when you're dealing with young guys coming out of college, thinking that they're going to tear the world up?
Well, the hardest thing about, dealing with young people, and I can't ever forget that I was young as well. And the hardest thing is, and I always ask every client that I work with, right? And I learned this as a player. I had a coach one time who asked me, he asked me, he said, BJ, do I have permission to tell you the truth? And that made such a profound imprint on me as a young kid, because here was, I had a coach who I kind of looked at as an authority figure as a young kid, and he was asking me for my permission to tell me something, whether I wanted to hear it or not. And I had to make, in that moment, I had to make a decision whether I was going to be coachable or I was going to be uncoachable. And once I made the decision to be coachable, then I had the responsibility now to figure out what was my relationship going to be with this coach in a working relationship.
Yeah.
So I always ask every of my clients, do I have permission to tell you the truth? Because if you don't want to hear the truth, then we probably not going to have a career. You're not going to have a career.
That's right.
And once you make that decision and you take responsibility, then we can have real meaningful conversation. So with that, you have to take responsibility. It's not that I don't want you to be a star. It's not that, everyone should try, but at some point you realize some of these guys are just different type of, LeBron James is a different type of athlete.
That's
Okay.
Right. That's right.
Now when we're sitting at home watching on television, you go, oh yeah, I could do that. But you learn that some of them are just different, right? When I saw Shaquille O'Neal for the first time, that was just a different type of athlete, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but you can't really see that until you're there. Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, those guys are just, they're just cut from a different cloth than the rest of us, right? And, we're good athletes, but those guys are like exceptional. Mm-hmm. And so that has always been my thing with, wanting to become an agent, because in the end, I always tell people, share with the young people this, people always ask me who the best player in the draft. And I always tell all of my clients, I don't care who's the best player in the draft, but I do care about who's the best player after the draft. Who's the best player after the draft? Who's the best player? It doesn't matter who's the best player before the draft. That doesn't really matter, right? There's been a lot of players who they thought was a can't miss, but who is the best player after the draft? Because that's the guy that's going to have a career. So in the end, you know, our goal is how quickly can you become a pro? How quickly can you become a pro and have an understanding of who you are before they start telling you who you ought to be? And I encourage all of these young players today. They're incredible athletes, and that's always been the challenge, right? And the challenge is having the ability to self-reflect and and understand who you really are, not who you want to be, but who you really are. And that's always my challenge with working with young people, because once you understand that better than anyone else, then you can have a career here and play as long as you can possibly play. And what's wrong with having a 15-year career in the NBA? What's wrong
Right.
with that? There's nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
So it's always a work in progress. And, you know, it's been a great challenge. I had so many questions when I was a player, and I just tried to be there to answer some of those questions that I wanted to ask people when I was playing. But more importantly, now that we have more information available to us, is to allow these young people to learn about who they really are. And then if you can do it and transition like you have and like I have, you know, the NBA and the business of sports is a great business to work in.
Agreed. Now, you know, just like on the court, when you played, you had great success. You were multi-skilled. You appear to have taken those skills off the court because you've been a television commentator. Uh,
Right.
you have a podcast currently that you do. You've been in the front office of an NBA team
Right.
with the Bulls and somewhere else. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been all over this business. You know, I've been all over this business.
And so would you feel like your value is best served in your current situation, do you think?
Well, it just kind of comes, you know, I never anticipated that I was going to be an agent, just like I never anticipated that I was going to work in the front office. You know, Steve, I was really just, I was a curious kid, right? And my curiosity is what made me want to find out what this business was really all about, right? That's why I wanted to work in the front office, because I was just intrigued about, like, how did I get drafted?
Mm.
Like, you know, why were we playing games on Big Monday? Why couldn't we play them on Tuesday? Like, you know, when I would go to Carver Hawk Arena, why were those signs on the side, High V grocery store or what have you? So I was the curious kid, you know, like all of a sudden, you know, how did these commercials come out, like Be Like Mike? You know what I mean? Like, you know, why was Gatorade suddenly on all of the cups that we were drinking out of? So my curiosity is what really brought me to the front office, because I wanted to know how I got drafted. I wanted to know how players got traded. I wanted to know how players, you know, played in this league, why some made it, why some didn't. So that was the first thing. And I thought if I'm going to do anything, at least learn the business. And so I was very fortunate to work there in Chicago, actually, and just learn the business for 5 or 6 years. And it was a great teaching tool, because the basketball I had, you know, I've seen that firsthand up close, but then I got a chance to trade players. I got a chance to draft players. I got a chance to see how players develop. And most important thing, I got a chance to see the business.
Mm-hmm.
I was seeing how, you know, the television contracts work. I was seeing how, you know, teams and organizations were trading contracts, the salary cap, the global game as we started expanding, and, you know, you start doing things globally.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a great teaching tool, and it really just opened my eyes to the business of sports, right? Beyond just playing the game. You know, how are they owning these teams? How does the expansion work? You know, how all of a sudden are we doing business in China? Why are we doing business in India? Now you have the basketball league now starting in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I just became open to it. And then, you know, to top it off, what's going on here with all of this television and radio and sports radio and talk radio, and how does this all fit in? And now with the internet and now doing podcasting, it's continuing to grow.
Yep.
And so I was just that curious kid. And as I continue to ask questions, instead of just sitting around, I always kind of, you know, I've always kind of been a person that just kind of dive into it to see what it is. And here I am, an agent, but I never anticipated being an agent. I just knew there was an opportunity for someone to answer some questions that I wish I could have asked somebody when I was playing.
There you
And that's how I kind of fell into it.
Is there one player that you think right now is young in the NBA that could evolve into, maybe not an all-time great, but maybe top 5 in their, in the particular class that they're in? So, for example, we know about Ja Morant, we know about Zion Williamson, but is there other players that are a little bit below the radar, maybe rookie, first year, second year, that are in the league that people may not be paying attention to, but may need to?
Well, it's kind of the NBA now. I've had been around the game now for over 30 years. I'm beginning to see a shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the shift is, when a player was drafted number 1 and number 2, that meant something totally different, 20, 25 years ago than what it means today. Right now, we're in this age of player development, right? So you're going to come into the league now and they'll say, well, we're going to give you a couple years to develop. When we came in the league, the number 1 pick was David Robinson. The number 1 pick was Akeem Olajuwon. The number 1 pick was Patrick Ewing, Shaquille O'Neal. When you were the number 1 pick, you came in and you performed, right? You were Allen Iverson, right? You didn't come in with an idea, well, I need a couple years to kind of feel my way through this, right? So the way I look at these players today is not the same that I look at them back then, and that's because of how young they really are. What I am beginning to notice is that there's 2 things that's really happening or shifting in the league. So the first thing is the best young players now in the NBA are all foreign-born players, right? So the Luka Doncic, Jokic,
Yep.
Porzingis,
Yeah.
Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, so forth and so on. Giannis.
Great point.
The best young players are the foreign-born players. And then the best domestic players now are the players who are like mid-major players, right? So Steph Curry, Damian Lillard, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, CJ McCullough, so forth and so on.
Great call.
So you're beginning to see a shift in what works and what doesn't work in professional sports. And so that's what I'm kind of seeing now. So I don't really look now at, where you get drafted, right? Whether you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But what I really look at now is who drafts you, like where you go, right? Because where you go now is meaningful to your development, right? Ja Morant is in a situation where, here's another kid, a couple years, mid-major player, suddenly he's prepared for that moment. And then you may get another player from another school who is one of the blue bloods, and 1 year, and then they come in and they're just not ready yet. It's not because they're not a good player or good talent. They're just not ready for that step. So it's been interesting to watch, because now you're seeing the needs of the players change. And I think the NBA is trying to figure that out. But most importantly, what you're figuring out is that the way we play now, we have to play a style that's going to allow these young players to come in and develop. So that's why you're seeing everyone play basically the same style of play, right? Everyone's doing pace and space.
Yep.
Right. So 15 years ago, the Bulls had their player plan, right? They ran their triangle offense. And then the Pistons had their way of playing. And then the Lakers had Showtime. And then Denver had their style. And Utah had a style. Everyone had a different style. Now you look at the NBA, everyone plays the same way. All 30 teams right now, pace and space. Every team in the league is shooting threes. Well, everyone can't shoot like Steph Curry. Everyone can't shoot, but everyone is playing the same way, because now we're having an issue is how to get people to go from one stage of the career to another, right? How do you get this young kid who's 18, 19, how does he transition into becoming a professional? And so you're seeing this kind of phase of the NBA where every team plays the same way. Every team is running the same plays. And I just find it interesting because the NBA is faced with a problem it's never had before, and that's how to help young people develop. Because normally they were in school for 2, 3, 4 years, many of us before they came.
Yep.
And now that same development curve is not there, and they're forced to come in and play because of where they're drafted, in the lottery with many of these franchises.
That's BJ Armstrong. I'm Stephen Bardo. You're watching Bardo's Breakdown. We're going to wrap up here shortly. BJ, I've been asking guys, do you have a story around Kobe Bryant, whether you played against him or whether you've been around him, or is there a story around Kobe? Because he was he was cloaked in mystery when he was playing, because I think he was so close to the vest. But this guy is so dynamic. He was so dynamic in the way that he left value with people in the game. Do you have any kind of story, anything around Kobe?
Yeah, well, him and I, it's funny when I remember he came in the league right around 90, I want to say 95 or 96 or so, somewhere around there. That time when he came into the league, we shared the same agent, Armstrong,
Yep.
who is now the president over there, part owner over with the Detroit Pistons, and we shared the same agent. And I remember when I met him for the very first time, his intensity and focus was right there for a young kid. And I can remember when he came, he was like, this kid wants to know everything about the triangle offense. And that was like the very first day that I met him, right? And I was like, why do you want to learn the triangle offense? He said, because you know what, I want to know the footwork. He didn't say anything else about Mike. He just said, I just want to know his footwork and how he operated in that system. And that was like the summer he got drafted. And I was always coming out to LA to play, and I was spending a lot of time in LA in the summer as a former player. And him and I just spent weeks on end just working on footwork. He just wanted to know the footwork of the triangle offense, and we would talk, and I'll always maintain that relationship. And I don't know if many people knew it, and I guess many people didn't have to know it, but we would spend hours on end just talking about the triangle and the footwork. He just wanted the footwork of how to work. And the thing that was most impressive about him was he was young. He was like 18 or 19, but he could focus. And he had clearly an understanding of the game. And he had an abstract way of looking at it, of understanding, well, what would happen, what would Michael do if you were to cut this off? And he always had counters. And I thought, wow, he's a young kid right out of high school, and he's already looking for counters and things. So his understanding of the game far exceeded his age, and he was already into the nuances of the game as a young kid. And he went on to have an amazing career, and it's so unfortunate. It still seems unbelievable to me, even to this day, to talk about him, and he's no longer with us.
Sure.
But I certainly enjoyed my times with him, and the best of him and his family. And as I got to know him and his family at the time, and watching him get married and have kids, and obviously an amazing career. But you could see from day one that he had a different idea about how to prepare for this game and how serious he was about his craft. I mean, he was very serious about his craft. And but he was intrigued with that footwork. He just wanted the right footwork and know how to handle all these different types of situations. And he hadn't scored a point yet in the NBA, which I thought was, okay, that's fine. He must have already seen before we saw it. And clearly he scored over 30,000 points or so. So he had something he knew that the rest of us didn't.
Man, BJ, that's so well said. I really appreciate you sharing that. And, we'll wrap up on that. Where can the viewers find you on social media?
You can find me everywhere. I'm everywhere. I'm here. I'm old. I don't really know how it works. I do a couple of podcasts, and I have great young people that they get it all out. But at BJ Armstrong here on Twitter and Instagram, and check out our podcast. I probably got like 5 of them that I do, and they're just fun to do. So I'm so happy for you, so proud of you to see what you're doing. And I'm always telling my kids, oh man, I played against him, right? Whenever I see you on television
Yeah.
and stuff. So, but you can find me, you know, if you have nothing else to do, check me out. I got a little podcast here. I think my latest one is The Kid, BJ. I got another one. I'm all over. So, but no, I appreciate being a guest on, and all the best. And anytime, I'd love to come back on again if you have
Oh man, I'm definitely gonna have you, partner. But
me.
that's BJ Armstrong. I'm Stephen Bartle. That'll do it for this edition of Bartle's Breakdown. Make sure you check back on the page. We'll have more interviews similar to this, and I'll be going live, like I said. So it'll either be 3 p.m. or it'll be an interview like this every day until we all get through this coronavirus situation. So stay safe, do the safety protocol, and we'll check in with you next time. Peace.